إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله.
شكرا لحضراتكم. ميرسي جدا جدا. Okay, I've been informed that the lecture will be in English, so
Yes.
I'm switching to English.
Yes.
And please feel free to interrupt me whenever you want. If you want to ask, to comment within the presentation or at the end. This is all yours. Okay. So now we were gonna take an overview on the water situation in Egypt, and then the water situation in the Nile Basin, because actually it's very important for all of us to understand the cooperation, specifically the technical cooperation between Egypt and the Nile Basin countries. And in order to do this, we have to understand first the hydrology of the basin. And within our presentation also, we will try to shed some light on a project that maybe you heard a lot on something called the establishment of a navigation line between Lake Victoria and the Mediterranean Sea. This is a project that I have to honor to be the director, and we will talk a little bit also about the bilateral cooperation between Egypt and the Nile Basin countries. To start, we have to understand, I think that we all know, but let's emphasize it again, that Egypt is among the driest countries in the world. As you see in the maps, you find that Egypt is almost desert, except
دكتورة تهاني احنا we cannot see the map. Can you go to open share tray اللي هي المستطيل المربع اللي فيه سهم كده؟
You cannot see the map because I already المفروض اني share. I did share the screen. Okay.
Can you share it again?
Okay, sure. Give me a second, please.
Okay.
I'm not very familiar with Teams. Can you see it now?
We will wait. It may take some time. We cannot see the screen yet.
And now
I think it's coming now, but yeah, still we cannot see the screen, but there is some changes. Can you repeat the share again?
هو الشير ظاهر عندي.
هو it is shared I think.
حضرتك فاتحه تيمز صح؟
أفندم؟
حضرتك فاتحه تيمز باين عندي
أنا فاتحه تيمز
تمام. water situation Egypt تمام.
Yes, okay. The screen is available now for everybody.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, but I will. Now you see it better?
Yes, this is full screen. Great.
Voila. Yalla, it's coming.
Yes.
Okay, as you see in the maps, you see that Egypt is almost desert except of the Nile Valley and the Delta. And in the upper map, you can see also the rainfall in Egypt, and you find that the rainfall is almost it's very minimal at the coastal areas, and it is decreasing until reaching 0 millimeters in most of the countries. So Egypt is among the driest countries in the world, and also, Egypt depends for more than 97% of their water resources, of Egypt's water resources, are coming from outside of the borders. This is something that we have to keep in mind all the time. And this explains the importance of cooperation with the Nile Basin countries. We'll elaborate on this later. we have a water shortage gap between the users and the resources that are about 21 billion cubic meters. Only 3.5% of the total land area of Egypt is cultivated. And we have more than $10 billion of food gap that we overcome by virtual water or by importing agricultural products from outside. We import almost 60% of our food. And the agricultural sector, which is employing more than 31% of the labor force and 49% of this labor force is females. And this explains the importance of agriculture. And this explains again how critical the water resources management in Egypt is important. And this is why since early ages, the Egyptian farmer has done his homework very well by having one of the oldest irrigation networks in the world. Here we can see the water demand and the water resources in Egypt and the water balance. So you can find that a total of 80.3 billion cubic meter per year are in the demand, while the resources do not exceed 60 billion cubic meter per year. So how do we overcome this gap? It is by recycling or reuse for agricultural drainage water, and also by wastewater reuse. Accordingly, the reuse of water increased the overall water use efficiency to more than 80% of a percentage that is higher than 80%. So by the water reuse, Egypt is recycling more than 2 times. Sometimes it happens to reuse the water 3 times before disposing it in the Mediterranean Sea. Our challenges are many. I think that I don't need to share this with you, because I think that you all know it. Our internal challenges are water scarcity. Of course, we have aridity. The groundwater is available, but it is very deep groundwater, and economically speaking, it is very difficult to abstract the Nubian sandstone aquifer water, because it is really very deep groundwater. Of course, the population increases, and increases and puts more pressure on water and food and energy. This is from the internal perspective, but from the external perspective also, we have very big challenges in climate change. As you know, Egypt is subject to climate change. The Nile Delta specifically, we are facing sea level rise, and this sea level rise has its negative impact, of course, on the groundwater salinity. We are also subject to climate change from a different aspect, because there is a high uncertainty in the Nile water resources, the Nile flow. Some scenarios on climate change predict that there will be high flows, high rains, and subsequently high flows in the future. Some other climate models say that we will face droughts. Accordingly, we have this challenge to be ready for droughts and for floods as well. We are depending very highly on the water resources from outside of the borders, which makes us very, very vulnerable to any upstream projects that might have negative impact on our resources. And of course, we are facing, and that I think that all of us are following now, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam problem. And this lack of coordination puts us in a very critical situation. The main features of the Nile Basin, we have in the Nile Basin, the basin's area is about 3 million square kilometers. The area of lakes is 81,500 square kilometers. The area of swamps is 70,000 square kilometers. The length of the Nile is more than 6,700 kilometers. The length of the rivers and tributaries, so if we talk about the length of the rivers and tributaries of the Nile, we're talking about more than 37,500 kilometers. And the main features of the Nile Basin, the Nile is shared by 11 riparian states, with more than 300 million people. They will be 600 at 2025, which is tomorrow. Although the Nile is the longest river in the world, unfortunately, when it comes to the river discharge, it is among the least. We talk about 84 billion cubic meters coming in at Aswan. We can call the Nile as a very complex, the Nile Basin is a very complex basin. If we look at those two maps, we can understand why this complexity. On the left-hand side, when you see the Nile Basin map and we see the average annual rainfall, we find that there is a big discrepancy and it's a big variability in the rainfall. While Egypt and Sudan are almost dry with almost no rainfall, we find that the Blue Nile area in the Ethiopian highlands and the equatorial lakes plateau are very rainy. So this puts different interests in the river. While we need the river for agriculture and for the livelihood of the people, the focus on this river in the downstream is more on hydropower development and hydropower production. And this is one of the important factors of complexity of the Nile Basin. On the right-hand side, we can see also the available runoff. We see that there are some swampy areas, and the runoff is high in the Nile Basin in Egypt, while we are mainly focusing on the rain in the Ethiopian plateau and the equatorial lakes plateau as well. Another factor of complexity is a term called the dependency ratio. This term is identified by the FAO, the Food and Agricultural Organization, as being the part of the total renewable water resources originating outside of the country. So it is the percentage of the external renewable water resources over the total renewable water resources. In short, it explains how much you depend on water from outside of your borders. And when you compare the Nile Basin countries, we find that Egypt has the highest dependency ratio, with 97% of its water coming from outside of the basin. While, for example, we find a country like Ethiopia or Rwanda with 0%, which means that they are controlling their own resources. They don't depend on water sources from outside of their borders. And here, again, it explains the complexity of the basin, because we are not all at the same page with regards to the dependency ratio. This map explains the three main plateaus of the Nile Basin. The Ethiopian plateau, where the Blue Nile comes, the Equatorial Lakes Plateau in the Lake Victoria and the Equatorial Lakes, and the Bahr el-Ghazal Plateau. In this table, we find that it explains a little bit the water situation in the Nile Basin as well. So in the Equatorial Lakes, for example, it receives the mean annual rainfall volume of about 527 billion cubic meters. From Bahr el-Ghazal, we receive 544 billion cubic meters, and from the Ethiopian plateau, 1,076 billion cubic meters. The mean annual runoff volume at the source, so at the Equatorial plateau, while the mean annual runoff volume is 527, only 15 billion cubic meters are flowing in the Nile. In Bahr el-Ghazal, 0. So none of the Bahr el-Ghazal rainfall volume flows in the Nile. It's all in the swampy areas in the Sud region. And in the Ethiopian plateau, out of the 1,076 billion cubic meters that fall on the Ethiopian plateau, only 79.5 billion cubic meters are flowing outside of the Ethiopian plateau. This is at the source of the basin. When we come and capture all of this water at Aswan, we find that the contribution of the Equatorial Lakes Plateau in the Nile arriving at Aswan is only 13.5 billion cubic meters. Nothing comes from Bahr el-Ghazal, and from the Ethiopian plateau, 70.5, which makes that out of the 2,147 billion cubic meter of rainfall falling on the Nile Basin, only 84 billion cubic meter arrives at Aswan. This explains that the losses, that the percentage of losses compared to the rainfall is almost 96%. It means that only 5% of the Nile water that falls, the rainfalls that falls on the Nile Basin, arrive at Aswan. This is an indicator that there is a big need for good management of the water resources in the basin. This is a schematic. Because we are a little bit late, I will keep it for later if we have time, but this schematic explains all the trajectory of the water until it arrives at Aswan. So from the Lake Victoria, from Lake Albert, from the Sud areas, and we find that only 84 billion cubic meters arrive at Aswan. Here we have to talk a little bit about the green water and the blue water, because from what you have seen and from what I have said to you earlier, that the blue water is the water that is flowing in the river, while the green water is the water that is coming from the rain. So from the schematic, you see that the rainfall, when it falls, it makes a coverage of greens and food for livestock, and all of this is unfortunately not counted. All what is counted and what is always said in the media is that Egypt takes the Nile, the lion share of the Nile, while in what I have explained to you earlier, that Egypt takes only 5% of the water that comes and all the rest of the rainfall is lost. Actually, it's not lost because it is on the greens and also infiltrated in the groundwater. Here are some definitions of the green and blue and gray water. The green water is the rainwater directly used and evaporated by non-irrigated agriculture, while the blue water, which is the water that is flowing in the river, it's the source of supply. It is equivalent to the natural water resources, whether it is surface or ground. Unfortunately, the groundwater in the Nile Basin is not counted and it is not explained and used and exploited the way it should be. And the gray water, it is the water required to dilute polluted from returns flow. This slide explains a little bit how the green water is consumed in the Nile Basin. Of course, in the forests, in the national parks, and in the greenery, all of this is green water. It is not counted, while it is a source of income, and it is a very important economic source for the Nile Basin. Now, after this introduction to the situation of the water resources in the Nile Basin, we'll talk a little bit about the evolution of regional and technical cooperation in the Nile Basin. The technical cooperation started by a project called Hydromet, followed by the TECO-Nile, the Nile Basin Initiative, and at the end, the VICMET project, on which we will concentrate. The Hydromet project, like the title of the project is Hydrometeorological Survey of the catchments of Lakes Victoria, Kyoga, and Albert. And this project was assisted by 2 UN agencies. The participating countries and governments of Rwanda, Burundi, Congo requested to include Lake Victoria catchment within Rwanda and Burundi, and Lake Albert in Congo. Ethiopia joined this project as an observer in 1971. The main outputs of this project were hydrometeorological data, ground and hydrographic survey, and some capacity building activities. Upper Nile Basin mathematical model was elaborated, and it was consisting of rainfall runoff and lakes regulation and routing modules and water quality mathematical model for the lakes. This Hydromet project was from 1967 to 1992. The Hydromet project was followed by the TECO-Nile. The TECO-Nile is it's a consortium of it's a committee of technical and also academia. In December 1992, the water ministers of Democratic Republic of Congo, Egypt, Sudan, Tanzania, and Uganda met in Kampala, and they agreed to establish a technical cooperation committee for the promotion of development and environmental protection of the Nile Basin. They first met in 1993, and the World Bank was the coordinator with the UNDP and SIDA, and they composed something called the Nile team. And we'll talk about the Nile team later, because the Nile team was the first nuclear to the Nile Basin initiative. We had also the Nile 2002 conference series. They were sessions that has for objective to facilitate the exchange of views over the Nile Basin issues and assist policymakers to explore possibilities of basin-wide cooperation on the development and management of Nile resources. This forum brought together scholars and technical experts in the Nile issues, and they had 9 conferences. starting from 1993 to 2002. Each conference was held in one of the Nile Basin countries. And then came the Nile Basin Initiative. The Nile Basin Initiative starting from 1999. The Nile Basin Initiative had a slogan or a shared vision, which is to achieve sustainable socio-economic development through the equitable utilization of and the benefit from the common Nile Basin water resources. And the Nile Basin Initiative actually is ongoing until now, and I'll talk about it with more details, because the Nile Basin Initiative started with a cluster of projects. So some projects called the shared vision projects. Those were thematic projects. There were projects to pave the ground for creating the enabling environment for cooperation. Those projects were on applied training, on confidence building, on benefit sharing. There were thematic projects. And also they have two other clusters of projects, which were the subsidiary action projects. The subsidiary action projects were projects on the ground. So they were studies in the field of hydropower production, in the field of agriculture, in the field of cascade dams and joint multi-purpose projects, in order to prepare for tangible projects to be implemented in the Nile Basin. Those projects were in the two equatorial lakes and Eastern Nile countries. Actually, although Egypt was the main founder of the Nile Basin Initiative, we found some difficulty to continue our cooperation under the umbrella of the Nile Basin Initiative. And this is why, because there was an agreement that was under preparation under the umbrella of the Nile Council of Ministers. This agreement called the Cooperative Framework Agreement. And this Cooperative Framework Agreement was the agreement that should be signed by all the Nile Basin countries in order to change the Nile Basin Initiative from an initiative to a commission, and to give it a legal aspect. Within the negotiations on the Cooperative Framework Agreement, Egypt had some concerns of the agreement itself. Those concerns was with regards to the water security. They were also with regards to the prior notification, which is actually we are facing now. It should be very well elaborated that before constructing a project on the Nile, you have to notify your neighbors, and you have to give them all the necessary studies and all the necessary information about the project, and to discuss together how to coordinate this project in order to be a win-win project without any negative impact on the riparian countries. Unfortunately, those articles in the Cooperative Framework Agreement were not agreed by Egypt. And while we were negotiating these articles, some of the Nile Basin countries decided to sign this agreement. The status quo now is that 6 countries have signed the agreement, and 4 countries have ratified the agreement in their parliaments. Accordingly, Egypt had to suspend its participation in the Nile Basin Initiative. Although we are suspending now, or we are freezing our participation in the Nile Basin Initiative, but this didn't ever stop our cooperation with all the Nile Basin countries, whether on the regional level or on the bilateral level. And this was what we're going to explain now. At the regional aspect, we have a project that we will talk about, and I think that in the media, if you search for the establishment of a navigation line between Lake Victoria and the Mediterranean Sea, or in Arabic المشروع الربط الملاحي بين بحيرة فيكتوريا والبحر المتوسط, you will find many news and you will find many articles. Well, the VICMET project is a presidential infrastructure championing initiative, PC project. And let me explain a little bit what is the PC project. Under the African Union, we have something called the Presidential Infrastructure Championing Initiative. This initiative is an initiative led by the heads of states. And they are concerned of the projects, some infrastructure, regional projects led by the heads of states of Africa. We talk about almost 10 projects. Some of them are on roads, some of them are on railways, some others are on fiber optics, and each one of these projects is a regional project, and it is led by one of the heads of state of African countries. And the VICMET project is led by Egypt, is championed by Egypt, and by His Excellency, the President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Egypt and IMPAD coordinated this project with the COMESA. COMESA stands for the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa. And this is what they called a Regional Economic Commission. So this regional project has a strategic objective to achieve socio-economic integration and cohesion, to achieve a sustainable, integrated, multimodal transport system, to enhance trade and tourism, and to reduce poverty among the Nile Basin footprint countries. The VICMET project expected benefit is to connect footprint countries via a relative low-cost natural transport route that is safe, secure, energy efficient, and capable of moving various types and volume of goods and cargo. Because, as you know, the river transport is one of the most friendly ways of transport and environmental friendly, of course. To provide also effective support and facilitation for trade and tourism among footprint countries and the rest of the world, specifically for landlocked countries. To provide opportunities for landlocked countries and to reinforce regions' position with the global economic system, and to allow more cooperation and regional integration in all aspects. As you may know, that under the African Union now, there is a concept called the economic integrated corridor approach. So Africa is now focusing, and the African Union is focusing very much on development corridors, an integrated corridor approach, which is using a road or a railway or a river as a connector between all the countries involved, and as a development corridor for trading, for tourism, and for all aspects of coordination and cooperation between whether the riparian countries when it comes to a river or a road or a railway. Our project here is under something called the multimodal transport. We will explain it later. Here we can maybe focus more on the navigation, we find that the Nile now is not navigable all the way. Egypt, of course, in Egypt, the Nile is navigable from source to mouth, but not the case in all the areas or in all the Nile Basin. And this is why, first of all, because some topographic aspects, and also the presence of some infrastructure projects that are blocking the way. So, sorry. And here we can see also, if we focus a little bit on the historic inland water transport and the main areas which are navigable. You will see them in blue, in light blue, the navigable areas in the Nile Basin. The rest of the areas, the thin and deep blue lines are the non-navigable parts of the Nile. I think we can skip the historical background. It will not be very much interesting for you. This is how the project came into life. But let's focus on the project components. Actually, this project components will be a navigation route, an inland waterways, ports, and inland water intermodal ports, navigation works and structures like dredging, locks, and bridges, of course, in order to make it navigable all the way, navigation fleets, transport operators, capacity building centers, and this will all be managed by agreements and legals, of course. The VICMAT path is divided into 5 reaches, as you see in the map. The first reach is Lake Victoria and the Victoria Nile in Uganda. The second reach is the Great Lakes region, Burundi, Rwanda, DRC, and Uganda. The third is the Albert Nile until Malakal. The fourth reach is in the White Nile and the main Nile in South Sudan and Sudan. And the fifth reach is in the Egyptian Nile. What are the main phases of this project? Because this project is actually what we call a long-term project. You talk about the navigability of the Nile. So it cannot be a very short-term project that is ended in 1 or 2 years. The pre-feasibility study of this project started in 2014, 2015. The feasibility study has many phases. We have completed already the first phase from 2015 to 2019. The second phase of the feasibility study, and we will elaborate on it later, is divided into 2 parts. The first part should start from 2019, but until now, actually, it is in the preparation. The feasibility study phase 2, part 2, is to be determined when the feasibility study part 2 is finished. And then will come the design and implementation phase. In the pre-feasibility study, it was completed in May 2015, and it was endorsed in December 2017 during one of the regional steering committee meetings. In this feasibility study, actually at that time there was no fund for this project by any of the regional or international funding agencies, and this is why Egypt, as a leader and the champion of this project, took the initiative to undertake the feasibility study of this project. And it ended up by 5 alternatives varying between navigation and multimodal transport. These alternatives are just maps for elaboration later in the feasibility study. The VICMAT project management unit was established, and a regional steering committee and national committee was established as well. A regional steering committee is a committee formed by experts, high-level experts from the water sector and from the transport sector from each of the Nile Basin countries. Within the pre-feasibility study also, there were promotional visits to footprint countries in order to promote for this project. They went to DRC, Tanzania, Rwanda, Kenya, South Sudan, Sudan, and Uganda. These are the alternatives of the project, as you see here in blue. This alternative, we talk about a complete navigable Nile from source to mouth. And in green, you will find the railways and the roads. So it's about this alternative was about rehabilitating the Nile, all the Nile, to make it navigable all the way, and also to rehabilitate the roads and rails in the Equatorial Lakes Plateau. All the alternatives actually are between making some shortcuts or some, how you say, channels to shorten the trajectory, or to combine between the navigation and the rail and road transport, which is the multimodal transport. So those are the alternatives to be elaborated later in the feasibility study. These are some photos of the missions to the Nile Basin countries during the pre-feasibility study phase. These are the Nile Basin countries. Of course, like you have seen in the map, first of all, it was the reach from the Lake Victoria to Mediterranean Sea. So the blue pathway of the Nile crossing Sudan, Uganda, Sudan, South Sudan, and Egypt. But all the Nile Basin countries requested to join this project. Ethiopia requested officially to join the project through the Baro River, Kenya in Lake Victoria, and Tanzania, of course. Rwanda from the Ruvubu, Rwanda from DRC from the Semiliki, Burundi from the Ruvubu, and Rwanda from also its tributaries. So now we have on the main trajectory Egypt, Sudan, South Sudan, and Uganda, and we have all the Nile Basin countries expressing their interest to join this project through the tributaries that are passing their countries as well. This is how the project is coordinated. We have here a steering committee which is composed of high-level experts from the water sector and from the navigation or the transport sector in all the Nile Basin countries. We have Egypt as a champion, so we have our focal point and the project management unit. We are coordinating with COMESA as a regional economic commission with the African Development Bank, because the African Development Bank provided fund later on for the first phase of the feasibility study. And in each of the countries, we have a national technical commission or a technical committee in each of the countries, and specifically in Egypt. And in this technical committee, we have all the parties involved in the water sector, not only water and transport, but also electricity, trades, finance. All the countries' representatives are represented in this Egypt National Technical Committee. So this is the flow diagram of our project. The feasibility study phase 1 was funded by the African Development Bank. It started in 2015 and it ended in July 2019 with a fund of $650,000 US. And the achievements were as follows. We had developed an institutional and legal framework and the training need assessment report. It was completed and approved by all the countries in 2018. We prepared also the terms of reference for the second phase of feasibility study. We undertook 2 capacity building programs at the regional level and 4 steering committee meetings at the regional level as well. All these activities have been already finished and they were achieved with more than 80% of the assigned resources. These are the countries that, of course, it was an international consultancy firm that had made the work, and it was also supervised, revised, and endorsed by all the countries. We can see here some photos of the consultant with the countries during the visits, and this is the table in which the consultant made his study visit in order to prepare the legal and institutional framework, and also in order to prepare the training needs assessment for all the Nile Basin countries. Under the capacity building component, we undertook a training program on the introduction of inland water navigation, starting from February 5th to 16th in 2017. And they also participated in 2 field visits. It was under the under the control of the Regional Institute for River Transport and the Arab Academy for Science, Technology, and Maritime, the Nile Research Institute, and the Hydraulic Research Institute. And it was a very successful capacity building program. These are some photos of this training that was held in 2017. And this is in the closing ceremony. Another training was held in Suez Canal Authority. It was in inland water transport, challenges and opportunities. It was held in 2019 in Ismailia, and it was regional one as well, with 2 participants from each footprint country. And the training was implemented by the Suez Canal Authority to share the unique experience of Suez Canal Authority to dig the new Suez Canal, and as also a vein or vein for development to be used. These are some photos of the trainees and during also a trip in the Suez Canal, and the closing ceremony as well. Now, one of the outcome of this phase was to propose an institutional setup for the VicMed project. Why? Because we are talking about elaborating and studying the navigability of the Nile, and we try to make it as a huge development cluster of projects, not only a transport project or a water project, but it's a development corridor, like we have said, including trading, including tourism, including many aspects of economic development. So this is the institutional setup that has been agreed upon. We talk about two units for the operation of this project. The VicMed operational main unit, which will represent the executive secretariat of the VicMed project. It will be located in Egypt. The responsibility of the OMU is to prepare and organize the policy and strategic options to follow up the design, the implementation, and the operation cost, the operations options, and to address the challenges. And it will include technical, legal, financial, and environmental technicians. For the connection unit as well, which is in the branches, we have an operational connection. We will have, because this is in the future, this is proposed and it hasn't been implemented yet, an operational connection unit. And the operational connection unit will be in Uganda, and Uganda will play a pivoting role in that project, because it will be part of the OMU and also part of the OCU. On top of the two units, we will have the Technical Advisory Committee, and this Technical Advisory Committee is another name of the actual steering committee of the project. This Technical Advisory Committee will be reporting to a Council of Ministers, and the Council of Ministers will report to the Summit of Heads of States under the African Union, and all of this will be coordinated by COMESA and by NEPAD. This is the proposed institutional setup that has been agreed upon among all the Nile Basin countries. This is almost, we can say, the roadmap of the project. Once we have fund for the project, because now we are in the phase of seeking fund for the project. And fortunately that last month, during the Cairo Water Week, actually at the end of October, during the Cairo Water Week, among our activities, we made a donors roundtable. We held a donors roundtable with all the funding agencies at the regional, at international level, were invited to the donors roundtable in order to seek for funds for the upcoming phase of the project. The African Development Bank committed itself with $2 million to start the second phase of the feasibility study of the VicMed project. What is going to happen within this phase, but it will go on the way with the availability of funds, because the predicted fund for the pre-feasibility study is $11.7 million. So what's available now, or what will be available now, will be only $2 million. And this is why we cannot make all the activities at once, but we will have to schedule these activities along with the possibility of finding fund, regional or international fund. And let me explain to you why we are not funding this project by ourselves. This is very political, and you have to understand it. When you talk about regional project, led by Egypt or championed by Egypt, it is better to find always a neutral agency to fund it and a neutral agency to coordinate it, in order not to say that Egypt is manipulating this project, or is not championing but is trying to manipulate the project. This is very important. So this is why we are seeking for fund from exterior partners, because I can see it coming. And why don't we fund this project, since it is an important project? So I'm replying to you in advance. This is the roadmap. It will be starting by some data collection activities. Of course, because this is the way it should be, we have to have a strategic environmental assessment, and it should include stakeholder consultations. A transport economic study have also to be done, and then to present all of these studies to make the technical feasibility study, including multi-criteria and cost-benefit analysis for the 5 alternatives that have been presented. And maybe if there are other alternatives that also need to be presented on the table, whether by the consultancy firm that will be responsible or by the countries themselves. Then we will have many stakeholder consultation workshops, and all of this will result to have an optimal alternative for this project. And this optimal alternative will be studied more thoroughly with an ESEIA, environmental social impact assessment, and followed by a detailed design study, terms of reference. And the following phase will be detailed design studies, and then the tender and the implementation. So as I have told you, it's a very, very long term project. It's not maybe you will work on this project, and maybe even you will be high consultants of this project, inshallah. So this is a schematic of the roadmap again. The strategic alternatives in the pre-feasibility study. We will undertake a strategic environmental assessment, transport economic study, and technical feasibility study, a multi-criteria analysis and cost-benefit analysis in order to select the best alternative, and discussions and decision-making. As I have told you, the estimated cost of this phase is $11.7 million US, 1 million for the establishment of the 2 units, $7.5 million for the technical studies, and 3.2 as operational cost. The expected duration of this phase, the upcoming phase, once it starts, it will be 38 months. The second phase of phase 2, part 2, is the conduct a detailed strategic environmental and social assessment of the selected scenario. The estimated cost is $6 million US, and the time required will be about 20 months. These are some photos. I'll not be very, I'll go through them very quickly. I was just wanted to share with you that since the start of the project is in 2015, many activities and committee meetings have been done at the regional level in order to promote for this project and to push it forward. All the decisions are taken among all the pioneer countries. We can see here the COMESA, the World Bank representatives, the African Union representative, all of them are present and pushing forward this project. This is in one of the steering committee meetings. This is also in one of the steering committee meetings. We have also promoted for the project in many, many conferences, like the Third Water Forum, Mediterranean Water Forum, in all the Cairo Water Weeks. Of course, we have a presentation of the VICMED project, last of which was this Cairo Water Week. This is also some meetings for the PICI meetings, and His Excellency Mohammed Abdelati is in one of the PC meetings in Cape Town in 2019, before we turned to virtual everything. The project management unit has also visited Uganda in order to take a look at the proposed unit, the proposed building for the OCU in Uganda. This is also one of the PICI meeting. It was in October 2019 during the Cairo Water Week in Cairo, and you can see at the right-hand side the NEPAD, and at the left-hand side the African Union representative. This table summarizes the fund overview of this project. The pre-feasibility, as I have told you, it was funded by Egypt with $500,000 US. The feasibility study phase 1 by the African Development Bank. The feasibility study phase 2 part 1, the 11.7, not guaranteed yet. Only 2 million have been committed, but no agreement have been signed until now. Wishfully, after Christmas vacation in 2022, early 2022, I hope that we can sign an agreement on this. The second part is $6 million US, not guaranteed as well. The detailed design and the implementation, we talk about billions of US dollars, of course, but the figure is not now specified because it will be a build-up on the feasibility phase and the detailed design, of course. Now we talked about the regional cooperation. We're going to talk very briefly about the bilateral cooperation between Egypt and the Nile Basin countries. Because Egypt is not only keen of cooperating with the Nile Basin countries at the regional level, we are also very keen to cooperate at the bilateral level, which means that between Egypt and each of the Nile Basin countries. The bilateral cooperation is one of the main pillars of Egypt's national water policy. It supports and consolidates the relations between Egypt and the Nile Basin countries, although we have this concern of the Nile Basin initiative, but still the cooperation at the bilateral and the regional level are continuing at its best. If you follow the news, our minister, the Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation, have just left Uganda for a study visit where he inaugurated a new phase in a project called the aquatic weed control. We will talk about it now. And also this bilateral cooperation is important to build trust and confidence and to promote the cooperation and benefit sharing concepts between Egypt and the Nile Basin. The bilateral cooperation is accommodated through many Egyptian authorities. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, specifically the Egyptian Agency of Partnership for Development, the Egyptian Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation, and some other ministries and agencies, the Ministry of Trade, Industry, Transport, Health, Electricity, etc. But here in our presentation, we will focus on the bilateral cooperation between Egypt and the Nile Basin countries through the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation. What are the areas of this cooperation? To exchange experience, to avail the development projects in remote areas in order to support our brothers and sisters in the Nile Basin countries, to complement the national development plans in Nile Basin countries, and to contribute to the sustainable development goals specifically SDG 6 on clean water and sanitation in the Nile Basin countries. The main areas are on aquatic weeds control, rainwater harvesting dams, and let me explain to you what are the rainwater harvesting dams. Like you see here in this picture, it's like a hole to collect the rain coming to a specific area instead of making damages, to collect these rains in order to serve people and livestock for irrigation and for livestock beverage as well. To dig groundwater wells. We also have cooperation projects in flood mitigation, construction of landing sites, and of hydrological stations, to institutional strengthening and capacity building, physics exchange, and applied research. So the cooperation is almost in all technical aspects. How does this cooperation take place? It starts by an idea when any of the Nile Basin countries, and let me tell you that it's not only specific on the Nile Basin countries. The Ministry of Water Resources also has cooperation agreements and the cooperation protocols with many other African and Arab and European countries as well. It starts by receiving an idea, an official letter from the Nile Basin country with the requirements and needs. Then it is followed by data collection and field visits to the country in order to specify what is the project's scope of work. Then there is a technical committee from both countries, a technical committee from the Ministry of Water Resources in Egypt and another one from the other country, which has asked for the cooperation. Both committees meet together and they start the formulation of an agreement or a protocol or of a memorandum of understanding and an action plan, and then the implementation of the project starts. So this is the roadmap, or this is the procedures from the idea until we reach the implementation of the project. With the South Sudan, we had 3 memorandums of understanding in 2006, 2011, and 2014. The first one on technical cooperation and water resources management, the second one also, and the third one as well. So these are memorandums of understanding and agreements that are renewed on each period. And these are some photos of the activities under this cooperation. Here we can see the before and after the cleaning of the water channels in Bahr al-Ghazal Basin in order to provide reliable navigation routes along the year. So we can find that the aquatic weeds are blocking the pathway of water, and we can see afterwards when the aquatic weeds have been taken away from the waterway. Here it's also the cleaning of water channels in Bahr al-Ghazal. We can see before it's totally blocked with mud, and afterwards when the water is flowing in the water flow. It's also here they are making some innovation and rehabilitation of landing sites in Wau and in Kwajok in South Sudan in 2019. Also drilling and equipping groundwater wells to serve clean drinking water for the communities in South Sudan. 6 groundwater stations were finished in Juba. The rehabilitation and maintenance of the main hydrological stations, 5 were completed and 1 is ongoing to provide hydrological data for development project in South Sudan. And you can see here our technical staff with the South Sudanese technical staff in a field visit. On Bahr el-Gabal in South Sudan, we have also rehabilitation of the Mongala station and the Nimri station. The construction of the WOW pump station to serve clean drinking water for communities and to use modern technology for providing clean water, and it consists of pump station, elevated tank, and water yards. The 6 groundwater wells also are ongoing. Other 6 groundwater wells are ongoing. In South Sudan, we have 2 rainwater harvesting dams in Tonj and Gogarial to serve clean water for communities and livestock. Of course, on the political level, many exchange visits have been taken both sides. Our ministers there, their ministers were here in the Cairo Water Week lately, and between the minister and the prime minister in Egypt as well. With Uganda, Uganda is one of the countries that has very big cooperation project, which is the aquatic weed control projects and other projects as well in the technical cooperation and the integrated flood management in Kasisi district. I feel that we are approaching the end of our time. So please, Dr. Ali, tell me, should I move fast or we end here to give some time?
I suggest that you give the students some time to ask you because they may have some other commitments after the end of the lecture.
Yes, yes. So maybe I will stop at that end and just to say that there is this aquatic weed control project is one of the most important ones, and many other bilateral projects are ongoing between Egypt and the Nile Basin countries. So by this, I'll stop sharing my screen and back to you, Dr. Ali.
Now we open the floor for the students to ask you. According to the list here, we have 38 participants. If anyone likes to comment or ask, they can either unmute themselves or raise their hands, whatever they want to do.
Okay, I can see.
Let us see now. I am looking at the list.
There was a hand raised, but I cannot see it now.
Yeah, there was somebody who raised his hand some time ago, but he disappeared now. Why I should actually start the question session myself, Dr. Tahani. You mentioned South Sudan and Uganda. What other Nile Basin countries we have strong bilateral cooperation in terms of projects on the ground?
We have very strong cooperation with the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo. We have also high cooperation with Kenya. Uganda is on top, and South Sudan. Burundi is in the pipeline because we have just had some technical committee members that have visited Burundi last month, and they are starting cooperation as well. With Ethiopia, we have cooperation on the exchange of visits and on the scientific part. So we have almost with all the Nile Basin countries at different levels of importance, of course.
Yeah, also, can you give us an idea or a simple comparison between the Egyptian Nile Basin cooperation 7 years ago and what happens now? Because most of my students know that there has been lately great efforts in trying to shorten the distances between our neighbors.
Well, nothing is more than what I have just displayed to you now, because actually we talk about regional cooperation and the bilateral cooperation with all the aspects. Although we have problem with some of the Nile Basin countries, so we are keeping the spirit of cooperation and the spirit of integration in spite of all the obstacles. We have challenges with Ethiopia, as you all know. We have challenges with the Nile Basin Initiative, like I have explained to you with regards to the Cooperative Framework Agreement. And in spite of all of that, cooperation is ongoing and it's high level. As you see, Egypt, when it took the presidency of the African Union, the cooperation was at the highest level of all. So I think that it is very noticeable that the prioritization of Africa is there on our list in a very high level.
Yeah, my question basically was that because of I noticed the situation very closely, that I noticed that our activities with our neighbors from the Nile Basin has differed from the past. This was the reason for my comment. Like, I find that recently, maybe after the problem with the GERD, the Egyptian government has moved in different directions with speed and action on the ground. This was the reason for my comment.
Yes, exactly. Because and it should have been a block for cooperation, but yeah, on the contrary, we took a very positive attitude in this regard.
Great. Now, Dr. Amani, you may ask yourself why our students are shy to ask you or comment.
Or maybe they are sleeping. I don't know.
No. This is, it happens many times that
they sleep?
No, they don't sleep. They maybe like, I don't know, they have yani this is something that for me is difficult to interpret, but we have 39 available students. I'm going to give them the last call if they want to ask or comment, because the time of Dr. Tahani is not open.
No, I am all yours. I think that they have other commitments, and yourself, Dr. Ali.
They have other classes, of course, and maybe they have exams, because the credit hour system makes their life difficult.
Yes.
Any questions?
لا تمام، احنا متشكرين جدا يا دكتور المحاضرة بتاعت النهاردة. اعتقد كل حاجة واضحة وشكرا جدا.
انا عندي سؤال بس معلش.
انت مش عاوز تسأل سؤال؟
عايز اسال سؤال معلش يا دكتور علي.
نعم،
سؤال بس معلش.
يا سلام.
هو ممكن بعد الاصلاحات اللي حصلت في بحر الغزال يساهم في النيل بعد كده؟ اصل احنا كنا قلنا في الاول ان هو بيساهم ب0%، اللي هو تقريبا ما فيش حاجه. بعدين في الاخر قلنا ان احنا عملنا تنظيف ليه وشلنا الاعشاب الضاره وكده. ممكن بعديها يساهم بيزود المحصل يعني الميه؟
حضرتك يعني هو طبعا موضوع الاكواتيك ويد كنترول في بحر الغزال وفي بحر الجبل اكتر للي موجودين، لانه للاسف السوامبي ارياز بتستوعب كل الميه الموجوده. كان في مشروعات استقطاب فواقد منها قناه جونجلي، وانا ما تطرقتش الموضوع ده لان قناه جونجلي الشغل فيها متوقف. مشروعات استقطاب الفواقد دي كانت هتوفر لمصر والسودان ما لا يقل عن 17 مليار متر مكعب ميه، ولكن كان ابتدى قناه جونجلي وللاسف توقفت. وكان في كمان بحر الغزال وبحر الجبل ومشار، كانت كل دي كانت هتبقى زي شورت كاتس علشان الاستبحار بتاع الميه في منطقه السود ريجن. ولكن للاسف الحرب الاهليه توقفت موضوع قناه جونجلي، و يعني احنا اللي بنحاول نعمله دلوقتي هو اعاده استكمال، يعني اعاده احياء الموضوع، بس طبعا ده محتاج بوليتيكال ويل من جانب جنوب السودان، ان احنا نرجع تاني نستأنف العمل في قناة جونجلي. هي مشروعات استقطاب الفواقد هي اللي متوقع منها انها تزود ايراد نهر النيل، انما الموضوع رفع الحشائش المائية يعني اكتر مشروعات خدمية لاهل المنطقة، ما بتبقاش ليها مردود جامد لحد اللحظة دي يعني، لكن طبعا هيبقى لها مردود لما يبقى في قنوات جاهزة لنقل المية بشكل افضل يعني.
تمام. اصل هو لو كل الفواقد اللي حضرتك قلتي عليها دي لو استخدمناها هتوفر ميه لدول كتير في افريقيا. افريقيا من اكتر القارات فقرا ونقص في الميه.
طبعا بس هي الفكره كلها انه الموضوع محتاج اداره رشيده للموارد المائيه، مع الاخذ في الاعتبار انه هو مورد مائي مشترك. يعني فكره ان هو مورد مائي مشترك دي يجب ان تؤخذ في الاعتبار عند اداره المورد. يعني لازم يكون في اختار مسبق، لازم يكون في تعاون في المشروعات، ما يبقاش في مشروعات احاديه. انما طبعا اداره الموارد المائيه في حوض نهر النيل اداره رشيده يعني تنتج اكيد عن زياده في التصرفات في نهر النيل طبعا.
تمام، شكرا يا دكتور.
شكرا يا فندم.
بصي يا دكتوره تهاني، بالرغم ان هو we got some response from very few people، بس بصراحه انا كان عاجبني السؤال قوي. اكتر حاجه عجباني فيه الكونسنتريشن بتاع الطالب، ان هو خد باله من الجدول اللي حضرتك حطيتيه بتاع بحر الغزال اللي كان قدامه صفر، وربطه بالكلام اللي كان على جنوب السودان.
طبعا
عجباني قوي حكايه ان هو he did some high level يعني thinking عشان يسال
طبعا.
السؤال، وكمان يستوضح حاجه ما كانتش واضحه بالنسبه له. فانا
طبعا لا احنا الطلبه بتوعنا عندهم وعي جامد جدا، والحقيقه they are open. يعني انا بشوف انه الطلبه الايام دي، يعني انا ولادي اكبر منكم شويه، بس عندهم نظره اشمل نتيجه الانفتاح واللي حضراتكم فيه. you know about everything. حقيقي مش لازم you know into deep about everything, but you know about everything, which opens يعني your perspective و your mind بشكل جميل جدا. so يعني يا ريت احنا كان على ايامنا في الاوبنس دي.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tahani. And this is another last call for the students. If somebody like to raise a point or make a comment. If nobody likes to comment or ask again, I like to thank Dr. Tahani for the time, effort, and the great information we received today. I myself learned a lot of things from you as usual. We thank you again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali, and I apologize again for this technical problem at the beginning. I'm very sorry for that.
No problem.
And I thank you very much for this great opportunity. It was a great honor for me to be called by you, يا دكتور علي تحديدا. يعني I'm very grateful for that, and I was delighted to meet you all, guys, and I wish you a very successful life and inshallah a very good future.
Thank you so much. And this is with your statement, I will call this session ended, and we will see you guys in a week time. Goodbye.
Bye bye. Thank you, Dr. Ali. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
لسه حضرتك يا باشمهندسة ميرنا موجودة؟
موجودة.
طب بإذن حضرتك يا باشمهندسة، وبنسأل على درجات الكويزات اللي فاتت.
أنا شغالة عليه، هبعتها لكم إن شاء الله الأسبوع ده. هبعتها لكم في شيت يعني كده الدرجات كلها.
طيب تمام. شكرا. الأسبوع ده إن شاء الله عندنا كويز صح؟
ان شاء الله.
على محاضرة 7 و8.
مظبوط.
تمام. شكرا.